Yo, we're really about to draft this person. We are really about to draft this person. I knew Stephanie White. I knew it. Stephanie White watching South Carolina as she's doing her side gig, her side job, covering the women's basketball tournament. I knew it. She was going to talk herself into Raven Johnson. Stephanie White, Amber Cox, Kelly Crossgolf. What does Dawn Staley have on y'all? What does Dawn Staley have on y'all? Let's get right into it. You guys know what we're here for. Like the video, hype the video.
Drop everything you're doing this very second, because what I'm about to reveal will completely transform how you view the Indiana Fever's upcoming season.
Just last night,
the Fever's front office
broke the internet, and the entire fan base is currently staging,
and the entire fandom is currently erupting into a full-scale digital riot. If you've scrolled through any feed lately, you've seen a timeline completely consumed by flames. Fans are practically at each other's throats. Grown adults are screaming at their devices, demanding that General Manager Amber Cox be fired on the spot.
Absolute,
and the catalyst for this absolute wave
one
of pure fury
one
is a
single name that carries more history,
one name
more
that
pain,
carries a heavy
more
legacy,
drama, and
more agony, more suspense, and more unsettled scores than any other prospect in this entire draft class. With the number 10 overall selection in the WNBA draft,
the Indiana Fever
grabbed
selected
South Carolina's point guard Raven Johnson, the very athlete Caitlin Clark
who was
once shamed on a global
humiliated
stage. The player who was on the verge of walking away from the game forever after the world
internet
tried to break her spirit. The same girl who rose from the ashes to neutralize the most prolific scorer in college hoops history during a title fight. That woman is now Caitlin Clark's teammate, and social media is completely losing its collective mind.
Welcome back to WNBA Pro,
your primary
channel on
source for
YouTube
the
telling you
raw,
the unfiltered
unvarnished
truth.
reality.
Buckle up.
Strap in, because this narrative plays out like a blockbuster, and we're dissecting it like no one else can. Let me set the stage for you, because without knowing the friction between these two, you won't grasp why last night changed the league's history forever. Melodies.
Rewind to March 31st, 2023. The Final 2023. Dallas, Texas.
The Final
South
Four
Carolina
in Dallas,
versus
Texas.
Iowa. The number
South
one
Carolina
team in the country
versus
against
Iowa.
the most...
The nation's top-ranked squad versus the most electric talent the college game has ever witnessed. South Carolina entered the arena undefeated at 36-0.
Undefeated
they hadn't
at 36-0.
tasted defeat
They had
in
not
over
lost
a
a game
year.
in over a year.
They held
were
the crown as the defending
They were
national
supposed to be
champions.
untouchable. And then
they seemed invincible until Caitlin Clark stepped onto that hardwood and practically scorched the entire arena. She racked up 41 points,
she hit 5 three-pointers,
she
dished out 8 assists,
and delivered
she was a
8
one-woman
dimes.
wrecking crew.
She was a solo demolition crew. Regarding this pick, forget Raven Johnson for a moment. We desperately needed a power forward. Instead, you draft a guard who won't even see the floor.
Oh, God.
Good grief.
I have to just rub people's nose in it a little.
And yeah, I really have to hold some people accountable here. Everyone was busy praising this front office like they were total geniuses. Fans were literally worshiping them.
Oh my gosh,
Amber and Kelly are killing it. No, they are totally inept. They have no vision. Caitlin Clark needs to escape Indiana immediately. Amidst that wreckage, during the opening quarter of that matchup,
something
moment occurred that would haunt Raven Johnson
for the next 372
days.
Johnson had the ball.
Johnson held the rock at the top of the arc. Clark was assigned to her,
but Clark was not
she was
anywhere
nowhere to
near
be found.
She was standing
lounging
in the paint 10 feet
away,
not even
barely
pretending to
acknowledging
play
Johnson's
defense.
presence.
And then
it happened. She stared Johnson down and dismissively flicked her wrist.
Like
she
she was
brushed
nothing.
her off
like she was
irrelevant.
Like she was not even worth the energy
ghost,
of walking out to contest a shot.
Worth the effort
The message
to
was
step
crystal
up and
clear.
defend. The message hit like a ton of bricks. You aren't a threat. You aren't dangerous. You're irrelevant. And that footage went absolutely nuclear.
Every sports account on the planet
sports
posted
outlet
it.
on Earth
It was on
blasted
ESPN.
It
was on
flooded
Twitter.
ESPN.
It was on Instagram.
It blew
was
up on
TikTok.
Twitter. It dominated Instagram and TikTok. The feedback was brutal. People weren't just critiquing Johnson's play style. They were tearing into her humanity.
She was called names that I will not repeat on this channel.
Labels that I won't even mention
personal
here.
attacks.
Hate speech, personal slurs, and actual threats.
So
the digital
savage
harassment
that Raven
was so
Johnson later
relentless
admitted
and cruel
she
that
wanted
Raven
to quit
Johnson later
basketball
confessed
entirely.
she considered
She
quitting
went into
hoops
isolation.
for good.
She locked
vanished
herself
into
in her
total
dorm
seclusion.
room and
She barricaded herself in her room and watched that footage over 100 times. The tears wouldn't stop day after day.
teammates
Her
had to physically come into
squad
her
mates
room
actually
to check
had
on
to
her. Her
force
teammate
their
Leah
way
Amir
in to
literally
check
broke
if
into her
she
room
was
because Johnson had
okay.
locked the door.
Her teammate, Laetitia Amahir, basically broke down the door because Johnson had retreated into the darkness and wouldn't answer. Think about that.
Number
An
2
elite
player in her
five-star
entire
prospect,
high school class,
the second best
a
player in her high
McDonald's
school
All-American,
tier, a McDonald's
player who was
All-American
supposed to be the
someone
future of
destined to
South
lead
Carolina
South Carolina's
basketball.
legacy.
And
Yet, one sequence on the floor nearly derailed everything. A single hand gesture almost robbed her of her entire future from
everything
her.
away from her.
But
Raven
Johnson
did not quit.
didn't
Nobody
cave.
is talking about this.
And nobody
what
is
happened next
highlighting
is
this
one of the greatest
part.
comebacks.
The following chapters represent one of the most legendary redemption arcs in women's hoops. And it didn't happen by accident.
Happened
It was
overnight.
forged in the
it
shadows,
happened in the dark,
inside
in
the gym during those
in the
lonely
hours that
when
nobody
no one
sees.
was watching.
Johnson went back to
simply
work.
got
She
back
did not
to the
just
grind.
try to get
Improving wasn't her only goal. She completely engineered a new version of herself from the foundation up. Her
three-point shooting from
accuracy
24%
from downtown
to nearly
climbed
37%.
from 24%
She nearly doubled
to
her
nearly
efficiency from beyond the arc.
37%,
The same shot that
practically
Caitlin
doubling
Clark
her
dared her to
efficiency
take
behind the
became
arc.
a
That specific look, Caitlin Clark once dismissed as a bluff evolved into her most lethal weapon.
into
She
a player who
transitioned from
demanded
a
the ball
hesitant
in the
shooter
biggest
into
moments.
a cold-blooded closer, craving the
It was-
rock
it was
when
one
it
of
mattered
those,
most.
Haley
It was
Van
that
Lith
classic
smiles,
Haley Van Lith smirk, that grinning despite the chaos vibe, like she's supposedly thrilled about being selected by the Indiana Fever.
Fever,
Zero
not happy,
joy detected.
Not happy one bit.
Not even a shred of genuine happiness.
Let me show you.
Check
Let me
this
show you real
out for
quick.
a second.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Man alive, everyone. We are winging it live right now. Catch a glimpse of this. There she is. Take
That's
a
the
look at
excitement
that
she's exuding
unbridled
after being drafted by the Indiana
enthusiasm
Fever.
pouring out of her
Not
after
happy.
the Fever called
And
her
then
name.
came April 7th,
Pure
2024.
misery.
The
Then came the showdown on April 7th, 2024, the title match featuring South Carolina against Iowa.
Clark
A
versus
rematch.
Raven Johnson.
Caitlin Clark
Again,
facing off
the
with Raven
entire
Johnson.
world was
Once
watching.
more, global
and this
eyes
time
were
the
locked
ending
in,
was going
but
to be
the finale
very
was
different.
destined for a
Clark
twist.
came out
Clark started the first frame absolutely unconscious, shattering the title game benchmark by dropping 18 points in just the opening quarter.
points
Iowa
in the opening
surged
period.
to a double-digit
Iowa jumped
advantage
out to a
early
double-digit
on.
lead.
It felt
looked
like a total
slaughter.
massacre.
South Carolina looked shell-shocked,
seemed
and then
completely rattled. That's when Dawn Staley pulled the trigger on the strategic move that flipped the script.
onto
She assigned
Caitlin
Raven
Clark
Johnson
as
the lead
primary
shadow
defender.
on Caitlin Clark.
Do not click
Stick
away
around,
because what
this
I am about to
revelation
tell
on
you
WNBA
right here
Pro
on
shifts the
WNBA
entire
Pro
narrative.
changes everything.
The very second Johnson locked in on defense, the momentum of the championship took a violent 180-degree turn.
Flipped
Clark's
upside down.
white-hot streak
Clark went
vanished
from shooting
instantly
lights out
into an
to missing
icy
everything.
slump,
She
as
made
she
just
only
5
managed
of her
5
next
makes
20
out of
shots.
her subsequent
She scored
20
only
attempts.
12 more.
Her production stalled at a mere 12 points for the remainder of the night. Johnson was basically living under her skin.
Face.
She was
stealing the
pickpocketing
ball.
everyone,
She had 4
ending
steals
with
and
4
2 blocks.
swipes and
she
2
forced 4
rejections,
turnovers.
while
She
coercing
turned the
4
greatest
critical
offensive player in
giveaways.
college basketball.
She relegated the most dominant scorer in the college ranks to a mere background character on her own stage.
All the
South
way back.
Carolina
They
clawed
seized
back
control.
completely,
They won 87 to 75. They finished the season
and
38
concluding an
and 0.
undefeated
A perfect
38
season.
and 0
an undefeated
run.
national
A flawless campaign, capped by an unbeaten run to the national crown.
Rocket
As the
Mortgage
paper
Fieldhouse
snow
in
fell
Cleveland, Raven Johnson walked to the microphone
stepped to the
and
mic
screamed
and shouted
5 words
5
that sent
words
chills
that
down the
rattled
spine of
everyone
every
watching.
single person.
The mission for vengeance is complete. You aren't just looking at a hooper here.
Warrior
That's a
who
combatant
walked through fire
who
and
survived
came out
the
holding a
flames
trophy.
and emerged
Now fast
clutching
forward
the
to last
gold.
night, April
Now let's
13th,
jump to
2026.
last night,
The
April
WNBA
13th,
draft at the Shed
2026.
at Hudson.
The draft in Manhattan at the Hudson Yards Shed. The Indiana Fever are holding steady with the 10th selection.
Overall
Every
pick.
single
Every Fever fan in America is
supporter
glued to their
nationwide
screen.
is
The draft party at
paralyzed
Gainbridge Fieldhouse
in front
has
of their
over 500
televisions.
season ticket holders.
Gainbridge Fieldhouse is buzzing with over 500 season ticket diehards crammed into the draft bash.
Podium
Kathy
and
Engelbert
announces that the Indiana
Raven
Fever
Johnson's
select
name for
Raven
the
Johnson
Fever,
from the
the
University
arena
of South
explodes,
Carolina.
but the internet
building
immediately
erupts,
descends into
but social
chaos.
media goes.
As soon as the team dropped the news on Instagram, the comments transformed into a literal combat zone.
Comment section
Wave
turned into a
after
battlefield.
wave of
Fan after
supporters
fan after
vented their
fan
pure
unloading their
rage.
frustration. Are
Is
you
this
kidding
some
me? We
kind
needed
of
a big.
joke?
What about
We were desperate for size. What happened to Gabriela Jaquez? Why draft another backcourt player? The most aggressive
the ones
critics
bringing up
kept
the history,
dragging up
the
the
wave
past,
off,
the
the
disrespect,
rivalry,
the
the
dismissive
idea
way,
that Raven
the
Johnson
heated
and
beef.
Caitlin
This notion that Raven and Caitlin could never coexist in the same room after their infamous history.
But here
Yet,
is the truth
here's
that
the
none of
reality.
those angry
The
fans
haters
want to hear.
refuse to
This
accept.
pick is not a disaster.
This wasn't a blunder.
This pick is a
it was
masterpiece.
a stroke of
Stay
genius.
with me, because there is.
Keep listening, because there is a hidden dimension to this that everyone is overlooking.
Completely
To grasp
crashing
why
out,
the fans
and why
are
they are
losing their minds
simultaneously
and why they're
completely
dead
wrong,
wrong,
we have
must
to look at the
dissect
massive,
Fever's
glaring
biggest
weakness of the
from
Indiana
last
Fever
year.
last season.
Offensively, Indiana was an unstoppable freight train of a team.
Clark
Between
running the
Caitlin
show
Clark
and Kelsey
orchestrating
Mitchell
and
dropping
Kelsey
20
Mitchell
points a
pouring
night,
in
scoring
20
the
points a
basketball
night,
was never
putting
the problem.
points on the board
The problem was
easy.
perimeter.
The real issue was their leaky perimeter defense. They were constantly getting roasted by high-scoring guards.
But let
Let's
me be
get
honest
real
with you.
for a second.
And here on WNBA,
On WNBA
Pro, we only deal with the
we
brutal
only
truth.
serve the unvarnished,
This isn't
cold,
about
hard
basketball
facts.
anymore.
This has transcended the court. Look, they are likely going to disable the comment section. They'll lock down the quote tweets soon. We needed to
reaction
document
from
this
Beaver
backlash
fans, we have to
immediately
get
before the
this
Fever
done
PR
now,
scrubs the internet
because by the
sunrise.
time the morning
I'd bet anything they're about to pull the plug on the discussion.
off,
This
they're gonna take
post
this
is
down.
getting deleted.
Something fishy is gonna
Something
happen, so we need to
shady
make
is
sure we
brewing,
cover
so
this
we've
immediately.
got to report on this
Trade
right
CC.
this second. Trade Caitlin? Wow. Already trying to drive the new kid out of town? Way to keep it classy, Indiana fans.
Yeah, we
Nah,
don't
we're
want her.
skipping her.
Yeah, I'm
this
done
team
with this
is
team.
finished. Just
Undraft
drop
her,
her,
you
you money-hungry fakes.
The comments.
Laughter. Those comments, though, Steph White is locked in. She is building a literal squad of bullies. It's all about
This is about
forging
establishing
a
a terrifying, unapologetic culture of physical and mental
defined by
dominance.
total physical
Think about the
and
entire
mental
offseason
dominance.
strategy of the
Consider the entire strategy behind the Indiana Fever's moves this past offseason.
perimeter
First,
enforcer
they
who will
resigned
physically
Sophie
fight anyone
Cunningham,
who touches her point
a perimeter
guard.
guard
Step 2,
who will
they went
scrap
out
with
and signed
anyone
Maisha
touching her
Hines Allen.
playmaker.
The
Second, they secured Maisha Hines Allen, a fierce championship interior presence who guards the paint like a prison.
like a
Now
maximum
the
security prison.
third move,
And now step 3, they draft
drafting
Johnson,
Raven
the ultimate
Johnson,
relentless chip on her shoulder perimeter
music,
lockdown defender.
ultimate relentless perimeter defender with a massive grudge and world-class lockdown skills. Notice the pattern yet?
You see the
Can
masterpiece
you see
that
the
Amber Cox is
masterpiece
painting
that
right in front of
Amber
our
Cox
eyes.
is
The
sketching
Indiana Fever
right
are completely
before
stripping
our
away the
very
soft,
eyes?
nice girl.
Indiana is completely shedding that polite, offense-only reputation that saw them get pushed around last season. They are
Systematically
replacing it with
with
players who
who
have
have
savage
absolute
instincts.
dogs inside of them.
Music.
They are building,
They're building
a roster full
of
of players who
scorers who
take
hold
things
grudges.
personally.
Raven Johnson fits the psychological profile of this new, aggressive team culture perfectly. Music.
When the Fever go on the road
Imagine
into
the
a
Fever on
hostile
a
environment
court,
and the crowd
fans
is screaming
while
and the
opponents
opposing
get
team
physical.
is trying to be physical,
Look at the bench.
you look at your
Cunningham is ready for war. Hines Allen is prepared to throw some heavy elbows.
roster
And Raven
And you have
Johnson?
Raven Johnson, who
She
stared down
ignored
the
a
entire
viral
country
snub,
after a viral
went
embarrassment,
back to work,
went back to the
and
lab,
grabbed
and won
a
a national
national
championship.
title. That is the exact mental toughness required to survive the gauntlet of the professional playoffs.
Break
Let's
down what
analyze
Raven
the
Johnson
real
actually
Raven
is.
Johnson.
Not what
Forget
social
the
media
social
says she
media
is.
narratives
Not
and
what the
that
wave off
viral
clip
clip.
turned her into.
Look at her
what she
actual
actually
game.
is as a back.
During her senior season at South Carolina, Johnson put up 9.9 points every night.
Points per
She
game.
dished
She averaged
5.1
assists per game. She
grabbed
averaged 4.0
4
rebounds per game.
rebounds, and
She averaged
snatched
1.5 steals per game. She shot
per
48.6% from the field.
She shot 48.6% overall and 39.8% from deep. Music. Reread that stat. 39.8% from
the player
three.
who was waved
The
off at the
kid they
three-point line in
dared to shoot back
2023
in
just shot nearly
2023
40% from deep in her
just hit nearly 40% of her triples. Music. She was also the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. She holds the
record for the
single
most assists
tournament
in a single
assist
NCAA
record
tournament.
and the
She holds the
all-time
record for the most
tournament
steals in
record
career
for
NCAA
total
tournament games.
steals.
She has a
Her career tally is 145 wins against 9 losses. That's a 94.2 win rate.
winning
That
percentage.
isn't
That
just
is
a
not
role
player.
player.
That is a certified
That is
winner
a
with a track
born
record that
winner
very few players in the
music.
history of college.
With a resume that almost no one in college basketball history can actually touch, is greater than your thoughts. Speak your mind. Stay respectful, but be honest.
I told you, man.
I'm telling
Stephanie,
you,
Amber,
the
and
management
Kelly,
trio
they have no
is
idea what they're
totally
doing.
clueless. They just keep signing anyone who happened to live in the state of Indiana once.
live in Indiana
you
that
lived
one
in
time,
Indiana
30
for a
years
bit,
ago?
30
Yeah,
years ago? We'll sign you.
your brother's a player for the Indiana Pacers?
Your brother is currently playing for the
Sweet.
Pacers?
We'll
Great, you're signed. You played for Stephanie White back at Connecticut in that totally stale, failing offense? You're hired too.
We'll sign you.
But here is exactly
why this pick
specific
makes the Fever terrifying.
Makes
When Raven
Indiana
Johnson subs into the game,
absolutely
the entire
terrifying.
defensive identity.
When Raven Johnson enters the rotation, the perimeter defensive identity of this team, music, shifts instantly.
White can now put Raven Johnson on the floor alongside Caitlin Clark, and the tactical advantage is absolutely beautiful. You assign Raven Johnson to
you tell Raven to shadow the best opposing guard. You unleash her like a defensive pit bull. How does that help Caitlin Clark?
It allows Caitlin Clark to finally
conserve
energy
does not have to
spend 40% of her energy fighting.
If Caitlin isn't wasting 40% of her stamina fighting screens, she'll have fresh legs for the fourth quarter. She will have much more lift
have more elevation
on
on her
those
logo
signature
three-pointers.
logo
She's going to have more burst
three-pointers.
when she drives to the back.
Her drives will have significantly more burst. In selecting Raven, Indiana didn't just find a reserve guard. They secured an energy-saving system for Caitlin Clark. Now let me address the internet's
that has the
biggest
entire
debate.
internet.
Music. Can Raven Johnson and Caitlin Clark actually play together on the same roster? I'll tell you something surprising.
I am going to tell you something that might surprise you. These two players have far more in common than anyone wants to admit.
Both are incredibly competitive. They both despise losing way more than they enjoy winning. Both have endured massive adversity that would have shattered weaker players. They both carry massive chips on their shoulders. Here is the real kicker. Music? Clark herself praised Johnson before their 2024 championship rematch. She openly
admired the way Johnson improved her three-point shot.
Shooting.
These are not two players consumed by hatred. These are two competitors who.
These fierce rivals share a deep mutual admiration. In her post-draft debut, Johnson vowed to absorb every ounce of professional knowledge available.
She plans to be a sponge. She said she is going to ask Clark and Mitchell and Boston questions nonstop.
And most importantly,
she is being.
More importantly, she is linking back up with her old South Carolina sister, Aaliyah Boston. That deep-rooted chemistry will be the foundation of her pro-transition.
And then there is Dawn Staley,
there is the legendary Dawn
Staley, in women's college,
the undisputed greatest tactical mind in the history of the women's college game.
Player she will miss the most from her entire coaching career at South Carolina.
She will miss most
because Johnson represents something that transcends.
Johnson represents a spirit that far outweighs any box score. She is the living embodiment of refusing to be broken by hardship.
Darkest moment defining her. Let me tell you something about Raven Johnson that most people do not know. She tore her ACL in the second game of her college career.
A devastating knee injury struck in her second collegiate game, yet she fought back to reach 5 Final Fours, securing 2 national titles before going 10th overall in the draft.
In the WNBA draft.
That climb
journey
is beyond
not just
impressive.
remarkable.
It is practically legendary. That grit is precisely what Indiana requires, because this lineup has plenty of scoring already. This squad needs a predator. They need a lockdown specialist to terrorize opponents for 40 straight minutes. The Fever start their 2026 journey on May 9th against the Dallas Wings. When the ball drops,
and when that game tips off, Indiana is going to roll out a roster that is built to win a championship.
Bring home a championship
Caitlin Clark,
trophy.
Healthy and
a revitalized Caitlin Clark. Kelsey Mitchell locked in on a supermax. Aaliyah Boston patrolling the middle. With Sophie Cunningham and Misha Hines Allen providing
bringing
the muscle,
physical intimidation,
Johnson adds
and
a
Raven
defensive
Johnson
fire
bringing a
this
defensive
franchise
intensity
has lacked.
that
This is no longer a mere playoff contender. This is a championship-caliber hostile takeover. The analysts are overlooking the power of an athlete who has spent her whole life silencing the skeptics. A competitor who was once dismissed and returned to humiliate the very person who showed her disrespect. She is a member of the Indiana Fever now, and the rest of the league should be trembling. You are witnessing the truth first, exclusively on WNBA Pro. To the critics in the comments labeling this a blunder,
bookmark this
do
video,
yourself a
save it
favor,
somewhere safe,
and
come back to it in
archive this
October
video.
when Raven
Revisit it this October when Raven is stripping the ball from an elite guard in the postseason.
While Caitlin Clark is pulling up from 30 feet on the other end, because this pick is going to age like a fine wine that gets better every single month.
This is WNBA Pro. If this breakdown resonated with you, hit that subscribe button immediately. Our analysis goes
we go deeper than
than
anybody on this
anyone
platform.
else.
Drop your
Share
hottest
your
take in the
boldest
comments. Tell me
takes
if
in
the
the
Fever made the right
comment
call or if the
Was this the right move for the Fever, or is the social media outrage justified? I want your input and activate those notifications
because we have a complete draft
because our
breakdown coming that you
comprehensive
absolutely
draft
cannot
deep
miss.
dive is dropping soon. It is an absolute must-watch.